This course is inspired by opportunities brought on by the recent landscape changes in the African retail sector. Localization of the retail sector can be considered as one of the positive outcomes of the challenging times brought on by, among other things, the recent health crisis. This outcome provides an opportunity for the local retail market to revive and rebuild itself as an industry that primarily benefits the local economic ecosystem in terms of skilled employment as well as small to medium enterprise development. We have taken an industry development approach in this course with the objective of providing a blueprint to rebuilding the ecosystem in an impactful way that could regionally scale and is replicable across different markets and even industries. The lens is the retail market. However, it is quite possible to apply key components of the model to other industries. We will start with a detailed description of the development model and then go into detail in terms of possible execution approaches. Ideas are only as good as their execution, so we'll go into detail about how to possibly approach implementation in a manner that increases the chances of success of the various initiatives involved in constructing and mobilizing the program. Let's get into it. So what is the pretext here? Well, we briefly alluded to it in the introduction. Once a thriving industry, the South African retail sector has greatly declined in the last 20 years, mainly due to imports as well as the influx of international brands with offshore production operations that contribute very little in sustaining the local industry, particularly from sourcing, manufacturing, and supply chain perspectives. The global pandemic has reinvigorated the case for localization of the sector, and unlike previously, consumer behavior, which is the main driver of the industry, is ripe for a retail mind shift that could see preferences move away from international brands to brands that embrace a local flavor, both from design and supply perspectives. Now, getting into the program based on that pretext, the first thing that needs to be clear is what the program aims to achieve. We have given an example here based on the context of the program. So, in that context, we could say that firstly, we would like to use this unconventional and novel opportunity to revive and reinvigorate the local retail sector in a manner that completely rebuilds the ecosystem from sourcing and production to the last mile. Secondly, we could say that we'd like to use this program to drive the skilled employment agenda. That is, we'd like to create jobs that could evolve and create sustainable careers that thrive with the thriving industry, a truly symbiotic ecosystem where the contribution of labor leads to the growth of the industry, which in turn creates growth and opportunities for the said labor. And lastly, we could say that we would like to move beyond promotional and retail sales jobs to providing meaningful youth participation in the industry in a way that could build sustainable careers and create tangible wealth creation opportunities for the youth. In this way, clear objectives have been laid out in terms of the end game we're pursuing here. Next, we have to go into some detail about how we aim to go about doing that. Well, first we could say that we want to introduce youth-owned and operated retail businesses into the mainstream retail sector in the medium to long term. The exact numbers would be based on research and what we realistically think we can achieve in a given period. It's not unusual to have lofty goals a la Elon Musk, as long as they are well thought through and there's a clearly laid out plan of how to get to them. Hence, we're going into greater detail about how we plan on approaching things from an operational perspective. It gives a flavor to the concept outline that says the underlying principle of the approach is innovation, doing the ordinary in an extraordinary way. The mission should be brief but holistic enough to ensure the underlying innovation supporting the concept design is clear and can be well understood. The ensuing questions on further details can be dealt with in the sections detailing the implementation of the concept. Now, let's get into just that, breaking down the concept. We will outline each of the core components of the model and detail how each component fits into the picture, as well as the nuances that relate to key attributes that will greatly contribute to the overall success of the program. So in the retail example we've outlined, the first key component is skills development and training. We want to start the program by equipping the recruited youths with critical skills to ensure they are at the level where they are ready to enter the market and hit the ground running. The first key consideration in this component is the recruitment and selection criteria of the youths. This particular program is designed such that not all youths will be business owners. Others will be skilled employees managing different components within different businesses within the retail ecosystem. The approach that has been taken here is that there are many youths that have acquired some sort of qualification that are now sitting at home. This particular program seeks to put emphasis on the commercialization of eventual ventures that will emerge from the program, and as such, every advantage that is available in terms of the other components has to be leveraged. The training and skills component is meant to supplement knowledge that participating youths would have already acquired from dedicated institutions of learning. There's one key consideration here: the parts of the ecosystem the youths will be trained on. In this instance, 3 areas have been defined as depicted. Each area will have subcategories. For example, in retail, the subcategories could be marketing and campaign management, buying, sales management, and operations management. The following outlines the defined potential training areas for this context. We're now done with the first component. The next component is infrastructure. A big value-adding principle emerges here, demonstrating the leveraging of the context to enhance the potential sustainability of the program. What is also evident is the introduction of considerations relating to stakeholders and partners. It means this component will be significant when we start to map our stakeholder model and strategy. The value-adding principle is unpacked as depicted. We follow that with related considerations which center on resources required to bring this component to life. A few milestones and KPIs are defined as well to underline the end game driven by this component. And we're done with component 2. Component 3 deals with inputs, the sourcing of textiles, a key component in this context. Remember, the end game is to introduce new youth-owned ventures into the mainstream retail ecosystem in the country. The viability of these depends largely on the execution ability of the would-be owners and operators. But also important are how the inputs will be sourced, as well as how the outputs will be received in the market in the fight for profitability and business sustainability. Options are explored with the intention of finding the best fit approach that will encourage viability of the ventures and the entire program. Component 3, in the bag. The next component, setting up the actual ventures. That ambitious 1,000 over the next 5 years. This is where it happens. There are a lot of factors to consider here. For example, it is no secret that the South African township markets are driven by consumption, and that if one could introduce products in demand at the right price point, one stands to make a lot of money from this market. As such, introducing 180 small-scale retail outlets in townships and lower middle-class settings and 20 high-end entities across the country per year may not be so unrealistic. Of course, it's not as simple as laid out here. There's much more that needs to go into it, such as the criteria used to determine what exactly are the attributes of these promising youngsters that deserve the opportunity to set up their own ventures, as well as the products and service mix of these entities and how they will be distributed in different market settings around the country. But as they say, the best way to get the answers is to start. A fully fledged theoretical model up to the last detail doesn't guarantee success. Some of the best detailed strategies are born out of the execution process. That being said, defining how the program itself will be set up and the options around how it will go about setting up these ventures needs to be defined upfront and needs to make sense. This will largely depend on what is possible and sustainable. One would need to weigh the risk of having a single point of failure against the risk of a well-oiled, decentralized model disintegrating into misaligned silos that cannibalize each other. Lastly, we deal with the distribution model, probably the hardest and the most critical part. If this part doesn't work, viability is impossible. This component relies on getting answers from the other components. One would need to know exactly what they intend putting into the market, what will be the intended margin and potential price point, as well as the required volumes. Also important will be defining the value proposition for potential distribution, retail, and commercial property partners, and how they would be incentivized to engage the program. And here we are. We've broken down the concept. This approach could be used to think out a development program idea and come up with the building blocks needed to actually make it happen. If you've got an idea for a development program or even an NGO, run it through this approach and see where you come out. We'd like to wager that you'll come out having made significant progress on your idea. From this point, we can now start building the program model, which we will do in Chapter 2.